Hey, welcome to this video. International Master William Paschall. We've been asked to go over a game played by the Leela Chess Zero program from the World Computer Chess Championship against a program called Gridginkgo. This is, in the early going of the WCCC, the only game that the Leela Chess Zero actually lost. And I think it's interesting to see really what brought it down in this game. So let's take a look here. Gridginkgo is playing white and Leela Chess Zero is playing black. White opens with e4 and we, with black, face here the French defense, or play the French defense. And I don't think that it really is a bad choice. So d4, d5, knight c3. I'm going to try to keep the video kind of flowing and quick and not go into too much detail. But it's a very interesting game, and it's kind of frustrating to kind of figure out how Leela Chess Zero went wrong in this game, but I think we see some key points. So we'll try to highlight that here. After knight c3, black plays knight f6, and white has the choice between, of course, e5 and bishop g5. Plays bishop g5, and now black plays d takes e4, which I think is probably the best. There are other possibilities, the McCutcheon, bishop e7, very solid, but the d takes e4 I've seen from a lot of strong players. It seems to be tough to crack theoretically. Obviously, this is close to, and it actually does in the game transpose to a Rubinstein variation, but the question here is, after knight takes e4, black plays knight on bd7. I've got to tell you though, the thing that you've got to consider, and what happened in this event, is that the people who are running Leela Chess Zero decided to go with no opening book and no endgame table base. So this was a really, really risky decision, just to see what it could do, without those extra bonuses. And here's a point where I think if you really went with a strict opening database, we'd probably prefer to play bishop e7. I mean, knight on bd7 goes into the Rubinstein. It's actually a transposition to the Rubinstein. So I don't really like this move. It seems like bishop e7 is the best for a reason. So this definitely seems like the best. Bishop e7, bishop takes f6, and then you can choose. But I kind of like the dynamic g takes f6 personally. There's a lot of theory here. Black stands pretty well. Look at the statistics. It seems to be okay. Also possible is bishop takes f6. But I don't really like the decision of Leela Chess to go into this line to let white transpose into a mainline Rubinstein variation. Knight on bd7. It seems like white has a little better chance of an advantage here. And then he plays knight takes f6, knight takes f6, and now knight f3. So we've gotten into a Rubinstein through this slightly odd order of moves. White has played bishop g5, and now h6, and this is like a main position for the Rubinstein French. Here white has two very important choices. Bishop e3 I kind of like. I played this, I think, myself in one game. I haven't played too many games from this position, but only one or two with white. Bishop h4 is the game continuation. Bishop e3 is interesting. I like this line. Knight d5 is a good follow-up. Then white has a lot of interesting choices, like bishop d2, or knight d5, bishop d3, or so knight d5, queen d2. But anyway, it's another story. The Gridginkgo went with bishop h4. This is also a main line, and without the opening book, Leela Chess Zero is able to find also the main line moves pretty much here for a while. c5, then bishop c4. This is actually not the main move. It looks like bishop b5 check is played a lot. Actually, a lot of different moves are played in this position, tons of different moves. But bishop c4 is one of the main moves. Bishop b5 check is more common. That seems counterintuitive, though, because why do you want to trade pieces when you have all this space advantage that white has in the development lead where the black king is in the center? I think it's counterintuitive to play bishop b5 check. Bishop c4 is an aggressive move, makes sense. Gridginkgo seems to try to keep the pieces on for the most part. Black now played bishop e7, and this move is kind of not so good, I guess, theoretically. You're supposed to play c takes d4 right away, and then after castles by white, you play bishop e7. I think it's likely that it could transpose, though. I'm not sure that bishop e7 is like a major mistake. I'm not sure white has anything special to take advantage of it. Possibly, he could play queen e2 right away in this position. duel of sacks played this on one occasion. But castles, and I think we get transposed now. C takes d4, queen e2. Actually, Stockfish didn't like that move when it was analyzed after the game with Stockfish. It's looking like queen e2 is given a dubious, but I think that's very strange. I mean, I don't really think so. You know, queen e2 is certainly not dubious. That program recommended rook e1, and this was actually played in a game by Nigel Short against Robert Hubner back in 2000, interestingly enough. But it's not clear that that's better. One is better than the other. I mean, white clears the d-file for a rook, and this is actually what happens in the game. So here Leela Chess played queen b6. This move seems strange. It seems strange, but the fact of the matter is that the black queen doesn't really have a good place to go. If you think about it, like the typical position would be like queen c7, but then it gets harassed by the bishop on g3. Out on a5, it's even further exposed. So I would think black should castle, and then white will move a rook. Typically that's what happens, castles, and then a rook to d1, rook f d1, more commonly rook a d1, and then queen b6, and white is just a little bit better. The people working on Leela Chess asked me to think about whether or not black went wrong, really, with the choice of opening. I'm not sure. It depends on what kind of position you wanted to play. If you wanted to play a more active game, probably the French defense isn't the best decision. But it's never going to be easy, to get an aggressive position with black against a strong opponent, as it is with humans as well. So the French defense, very solid opening, maybe not such good winning chances. You've got to think about that going in. Here playing the Rubinstein French, winning chances very minimal, but drawing chances, excellent. It's a very solid defense for black. So I think that normally you content yourself with equality. If you can achieve a draw, it's a good result against a strong opponent in the Rubinstein French. So we've got a standard position here, it looks like. And here Leela Chess grabs the pawn. I don't think this is a case of being materialistic. I think that there's some games that have been played here already. We transposed by a weird order of moves. This is just a situation where you simply have to take the pawn on b2 in this variation. This would be the analysis that I looked at. This didn't happen in the game, but queen takes b2. This seems to be a common line. Knight f5, e takes f5, and just simplifies. And this is kind of what you want. There's even a recent game, Nihua versus Dignoran from 2012. Even some more recent game, Bukovshin versus Lisi. But look at this. This is how you play for a draw with black in the Rubinstein. Queen takes e6, check, king h8. We're just simplifying, accepting a tiny worse ending, and basically playing for a draw. Here's Shirov versus Rajabov from 2004. Nihua, Dignoran. There's a lot of games. White's an itty bit better, but this is basically very good drawing chances for black. This didn't happen in the game. The move order was different because the computer played queen b6 right away, or Leela Chess played queen b6 right away. Rook f d1 was played. And that's an unusual move. And oddly enough, not too many games have reached this position. Most players have gone for rook a d1 instead of rook f d1. And for whatever reason, Gridginkgo went for the rook f d1, leaving the rook a, actually capable of getting play along the b file. And when you think about it logically, that makes sense, because if you're going to sack the pawn on b2, then why not have the a rook to go to b1? So this is what happens. Castles, knight takes d4, queen takes b2, so the second rook can come in through the b file. And there's only one game here where both players played extremely well. This is some game from 2011, Anakeyev versus Gromov, and just random masters, I guess, but they've played extremely accurately, almost, like computer programs themselves. Knight b5, and we're following this game just by chance. Knight b5 heading for c7. And although white sacrificed his structure, he's got a lot of pressure. He's also sacrificed the pawn and his structure. So at first, if we don't see the horizon, you think, okay, black's winning. He's up a pawn. The beginner thinks that black is better. But white has play. But white has a lot of development. And black has to actually be very careful here not to be worse. So Leela Chess did well. I mean, it played queen b4. White played knight c7. And here's a really interesting point where this position was reached in this game from 2011 between a 2200 and a 2280, and the guy played the move that's actually probably best in this position, though it's very hard to say. It's possible it was a correspondence game, I'm not sure, but b5 is a really nice move. It just kind of like destroys white's coordination a little bit. So this is the game Anikeyev versus Gromov. Rook a b1, queen c5, and knight takes b5. And this is not, this is not really intuitive to me. I mean, what would have happened, let's ask ourselves the question, if we go ahead and take the rook? See, this is maybe what Leela Chess didn't like. I'm not sure, but this is kind of an important question. What happens if white takes the exchange? Is it possible that Leela Chess didn't like this exchange sack? Because these guys didn't like it. They didn't go for that. And Stockfish seems to think that black's okay. And Leela Chess probably would have been okay, but it has to play very accurately, like b takes c4, knight c7. And I'm just wondering if there's something that made, the engine not want to go into this, because it looks like black's pretty active for this exchange for a pawn. I looked at a long line here. Black gets coordinated, he gets threats. Look at this cool variation. Like bishop c5 check, king h1, bishop b6, practically trapping the knight, but it gets out here, and then the knight establishes itself very strongly on d5. So at the end of the day, in this pretty forced line, there's a lot of forks, obviously, on c3 and e3, and black has a very strong knight on d5, so kind of like compensation. I'm not sure, though. If we look at this point with Stockfish, it says like white is plus 0.7, 0.6, something like that. So is it possible that Leela Chess just didn't really like this? This didn't happen in that human game, but maybe, they just simply couldn't calculate as far. Leela Chess could, said it didn't like the position, went into a new position with rook b8. This is an absolutely new position. So this is our theoretical novelty. Every game has a theoretical novelty. This is it with rook b8. And then rook b1. It was a really close game. I mean, I don't see a lot of mistakes by either side. And then it's playing b5 anyway, giving the pawn back, an almost human-like decision at this point. b5, knight takes b5, and then rook b7, guarding the c7 square. And although black hasn't developed a bad French bishop, it's inevitably going to get out through a6, b7, or d7. So it just about looks equal, but white keeps this little bit of pressure. And if we evaluate the position in a human way, like say Botvinnik would, we would say, okay, what's going on here? Who's better and why? Try to understand the position. The material is even. We've given back the pawn, but white remains with a slightly worse structure. But the problem is that black isn't quite as well coordinated. The bishop is not developed on c8. The rook's not developed on f8. So now bishop e5, rook d8, trying to trade rooks. White simply plays h3. You see a move like this, and you're thinking, okay, black's completely okay. If white's best move is h3, we should be fine. And black should be fine here, most likely. Bishop d7, and then knight d6, a very aggressive move, getting into the weak squares. Rook takes b1, rook takes b1, and now queen a3. This queen had a little bit of trouble in that I think it never really was able to coordinate that well. This may have been one of the problems for black to have to solve in the game. But here for me is the most formative point. At this point, the computer playing white, Gridginkgo, played knight e4. Okay, now when I see this position, I think that white is a little bit better. He's just more mobilized. He's a little better coordinated. Despite the broken structure, you've got to really look at the threats against the king side. These bishops pointing toward the king side. The open file for the rook coming down on b7. Black's rook is not doing anything. It's blocked by the bishop on d7. So here, I think that Leela Chess has to improve its play. It's playing like knight e8, but I don't like this move in a human sense. I mean, I feel like, what are we doing with knight e8? We're putting our knight on e8 on a terrible square, while we're leaving this strong piece on e4. And I don't know how the artificial intelligence is thinking here, but I mean, in my opinion, it's got to think more like a human. It's got to be like, okay, I'm slightly worse with black. I should probably trade pieces and simplify into an ending that looks holdable. But instead, it like places its knight on the back rank. Actually, Stockfish likes this move, but I think the other move, knight e4, is clearly superior. We're going to try to hold, and we should have every chance of defending this position after simplifying. but it doesn't do that. It places the knight on the back rank. I think this is dubious, and this is the beginning of the problems. Here, why refuse to exchange pieces while retreating your knight to a bad square? So rook b7, now white's getting active. And then the second weird move, okay, knight e8, even Stockfish agreed on, but this move, rook a8, okay? There's no way a human player, is going to play in this position, rook a8. The first there was knight e8, rook b7, rook b7, bishop f8. Another passive move. This one I don't mind, because there was a problem on the 7th rank. Bishop f8, bishop b2 hitting the queen, queen a4. See how the queen is kind of out of play here. Bishop c3, and there's threats to maybe trap the queen. But this is the second move that I don't like. Rook a8. I mean, this is strange. Why is it placing its rook on a8 out of play? So, I mean, there is something about guarding the a pawn. But, this move is a move, as a coach, I would definitely say, okay, this is a strange move. Why are you undeveloping a rook to a8 in this position? The other move is knight e8 that I think is strange. And these are what led to the problems. Because now white has queen f3, now white has some threats against the king side, and even though it simplifies, like queen takes c4, rook takes d7, black has to play this kind of desperate move here to protect his f7, and that is e5. And while it almost seems okay for black, a lot of humans certainly would have thought, okay, this is okay, we've got knight f6 check, knight takes f6, knight takes d7, no problem. There's no problem with our rook on a8, which shouldn't be there anyway. We're probably going to win one of these pawns on the queen side, but it never happens. Like knight d6, really nice move. And black has to play this move e4. It's like launching into this 4 sequence. And then white just eats this pawn. Knight takes e4. And you're thinking, okay, we're going to win the pawn on a2. But you can't, necessarily win it here. I mean, queen takes a2. White gets an unbelievable shot here, knight to g5. So you're expecting knight f6 check, but it's knight g5 that really crushes black with his triple attack against f7. So the human might have been thinking of queen takes a2, but I think that Leela Chess was just thinking, okay, it has compensation because white's structure is kind of bad. But it's not quite enough compensation. But it really has to lose the game a second time. One pawn isn't really enough. So like queen e6, it's still really hanging on. Rook d3, bad structure for white, obviously. But still there's this threat of knight f6 check. So now he has to move the rook. White has time to save the pawn. Now it's a pawn up position where I think that black has really legitimate drawing chances. But it kind of fails a second time. Rook c4, this seems okay, knight to d2, rook takes a4, we get the pawn back, right? But white gets the initiative. Really nice play by Gridginkgo, not being overly materialistic, but going for an initiative. Rook d8, queen e1 check, knight f1, and then queen e4, excellent move, centralizing. If you trade here, very good drawing chances, obviously. So queen g3, it keeps the pressure on. Rook a6, good move. Queen b8, very nasty stuff here. Black's just holding on by a thread, and the a pawn becomes weak. So rook e6, bishop d2. I'm not sure what this move does. We're just going to play bishop e3 maybe and reinforce that pressure on a7. Queen c6, hitting the pawn, and then a really surprising move, g4. So at this point, the pressure here is keeping us tied down to e8. We cannot take this pawn on c2. If you showed me this position quickly, I'd say, oh no, this is equal. There's no problem. Black's a tiny bit worse, but it's a draw. But it's actually not so easy. There's a decoy possibility with the a pawn. This actually could be very dangerous. On paper, black should almost be better because he has the outside pawn. But the problem is the pieces, the passively placed pieces, and the trouble that started with knight e8. And I think that the programmers for Leela Chess, from Leela Chess Zero, should think about how to make the program really think about exchanges in situations like that, where this computer has a dominant knight on e4, and we're challenging it, but we don't exchange knights, we actually go back. That's very strange, and I think that's where the problems occurred. But anyway, still it's hanging on. Bishop d6, queen a8 here, and then I don't get this. This is like the same thing again. It's almost like it's programmed not to exchange pieces. I mean, that's how it feels to me. Like it's got this high priority programmed into it. Do not trade pieces, even to your detriment. I think this is just dangerous not to trade pieces here. If you're worse, you should probably trade pieces. Queen takes a8, rook takes a8, and now a6. There's a nice trick, bishop h2 check. King g2, this is just analysis. Bishop c5, rook c8, bishop f8, knight e3, knight f6, rook a8. And admittedly, white is still better, even though black has the outside pawn for several factors. Because of several factors, the white king is like better. White seems to have slightly better control of the center, and his pieces are better placed, and black's obviously, you know, tied down. Mainly, this is our biggest problem. We're tied down on the back rank. So, unpleasant position, but probably drawable with absolutely great play by Leela Chess here, if it had chosen to trade queens. It doesn't. It plays queen a4. Now white plays c4, kind of a decoy. And then black played h5. And this is a very interesting move. I think the most interesting move played by Leela Chess in the game. It sacrifices a pawn here. And Stockfish is like, oh no, this is a dubious move. I think this might be a good move, actually. h5 sort of suckering the greedy Stockfish into taking this pawn, damaging its own structure, and actually eventually, you know, simplifying the position by playing g6 and trading another set of pawns. Even though black's a pawn down, I mean, you jeopardize white's king safety. This is a pretty deep move, and I don't think this is necessarily a mistake. This is something that Leela Chess would see, probably Stockfish would never consider, or you know, contemporary programs would never really consider. But h5, I think this is a really interesting pawn sacrifice. It's like, now its follow-up was wrong, because after g takes h5, bishop c7, rook c8 here, and then queen d7, black's playing correctly according to all the engines. King g2. White's clearly better. He's like up a pawn, or it's up a pawn. She's up a pawn. King g2. But king h7, okay. And white played bishop g5. This is considered a mistake. It supposedly should have played like bishop c3, pressurizing this way. And this would have been clear advantage to white. I looked at this line. Queen e7, knight h2, bishop takes h2, king takes h2, rook e2. This looks like... And then this was actually suggested by someone else. But I looked at rook e4. I think this move probably equalizes. Black's going to hold this ending. So even there it probably would hold. But bishop g5, this move f6 just really raises red flags for me. You know, the reason is because we have a dark squared bishop, and we have already like a lot of weaknesses, I think, on the white squares. We don't have a white squared bishop. I don't like the move f6. This move freaks me out. You know, I just think this is like a blunder. You know, this is actually a blunder because the white square weaknesses look very significant to me. Why put the pawn on the dark squares and make our bishop worse and create white square weaknesses? We can play g6. You know, I almost feel like Leela Chess was hoping to like win the pawn on h5 or something. But honestly, after g6, h takes g, in this position, I don't know, you know, I mean, this is not so easy. Rook takes e8, rook takes g5 check. Is this even a win for white? I don't think so. I think white's drawing chances are pretty immense here. This is probably just a draw, honestly. So it was f6 was the other really suspicious move that lost the game. This is probably the losing move, f6, instead of playing g6. It weakens our white squares here, like kind of critically. So bishop h4, and then king g8. It makes a lot of inaccurate moves around here. Knight e3, king h7, just moving back and forth like an old school chess program from the 80s. And now white is suddenly winning. I don't know what the time situation was, but it just lost. It's lost now. It looks like the pawn's too strong. The black king's exposed. It missed its chance to play g6. It has no way to eliminate that dangerous pawn on h5. That's another point. And this is apparently like a blunder here, but I think that black is lost. This is apparently a blunder, queen b5. And white just centralizes beautifully, queen d5. Now it's probably a win, hands down. Rook e5, queen f3, and then black has to go back and defend. Queen d7, queen a8, and then let's see, rook e6, knight f5. This is very, very nice coordination by the white pieces. Black's just totally on the defense, and knight e6 is really disruptive. Just breaking through with mating threats here on h8. The black king is just fried, so it's over. a5, knight d6. Absolutely winning. Black actually has to give up a piece in this position. Bishop takes d6, c takes d6, and queen takes d6, sacrificing the piece, and it's over. Rook takes e8. Stockfish gives us a dubious to exchange on e8, but what are you going to do? I mean, one check isn't going to change things. It suggests queen c6 check, okay, but it's still a lost position. Rook takes e8, queen takes e8, queen d5 check, king h2, queen d3, and then bishop g3, tactically winning, queen f5, h4. This is a cute move. I mean, here I thought, like, I would just play queen g6 check, probably. But h4 is a really accurate move. I think queen g6 check wins. But h4, like, it just knows it can get an improved queen g6 check on next move, which is really cute by the Gridginkgo program. So well played by them. Queen takes g6, h takes g6, king takes g6, and then we're just in a winning position. So Leela Chess resigned. But I think summarizing, like, this, not exchanging knights on e4 was an interesting point. Not exchanging queens on a8 was an interesting point. And the final point, you know, would be the f5, or rather f6 thing, where it, like, weakens its king side. I really like the pawn sacrifice that Leela Chess played with h5, but I think it has some ways to go yet, you know, before it will dominate in the World Computer Championship. This is International Master William Paschall. Thanks for joining me here for this Leela Chess Zero game against Gridginkgo. Bye-bye.